Welcome to the Marketing Mortgages Social for Brokers podcast. Today, I have with me Ifthikar, the founder of MortgageX, which is a new company that utilizes artificial intelligence, or abbreviated AI, to help with the mortgage application process for buyers and for brokers as well. Now, throughout this episode, we'll obviously be talking about how MortgageX works, but I wanted to get this AI expert on the podcast to talk about how you guys, the listeners, as mortgage brokers, can use AI in your day-to-day running of the business, but also to have a chat with Ifthikar to see where he thinks AI will be heading. Because remember, he has developed this app using AI. So he's going to have been using AI for a good couple of years now. So it'll be really good to get an insight into his views on AI. So Ifthikar, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on the podcast, Chris. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. I've obviously seen you on social media. You've been doing some work with Ash. You've been doing some videos. You've been putting yourself out there. Before we get into the podcast, what drove you to kind of say, right, I'm going in on social media? Where did that all start from?
Well, I mean, obviously Ash has helped us and we've worked with other consultants as well before. But I've always done videos because I run a mortgage company anyway. And
Okay.
that company has a YouTube channel, right? So we've done podcasts before. So I'm quite familiar with this area, and I like a lot of innovation and I try a lot of things. So yeah, that's how I got familiar with social media stuff. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Because not many people that develop a new company will want to be the face of it. Do you see what I mean? Sometimes they try and distance themselves, but what's great is I see you on the likes of LinkedIn. That's where I've mainly seen you, and you're putting yourself front and center to almost put a face to the brand. So just to say, it is great to see. So before we really get into the crux of AI and talking about all that good meaty stuff, can you give the listeners a bit of a background as to how you started and how you got into the mortgage world, please, Ifthikar?
Yeah. I mean, this is going to surprise a lot of people because a lot of people think I come from IT background, right? I don't. I'm an accountant by profession, right? So I've been an accountant for the last 20 odd years now. But we started mortgages because of our accounting clients, right? They wanted mortgages. And because we were giving a lot of business away to other mortgage brokers, one day we sort of thought, why don't we do it ourselves, right? So that was the whole idea. So when we started mortgages, probably about 8 years ago, we realized, I mean, people think accountants are bad. They call them bean counters and, all sorts of things, right? A lot of paperwork. Trust me, mortgage brokering is something else, right? It's got way too much papers hanging around, right? So that's something that really frustrated us, and we thought we'll find a solution for that, right? Yeah, obviously, we started this project about 3 years ago. At the time, we were not thinking AI. We just wanted to streamline the process.
Okay.
So again, it has evolved, right? So then we realized, okay, we need to use AI. So we started exploring AI stuff about 2 years ago. And today it's sort of come into fruition. And we use more and more AI now, right? Because we always look at some process and think, okay, how can we do this a bit more clever, right? How can we speed up that process? Because we are all about trying to speed up that process and make life easy for the brokers, right? That's the whole idea.
Right. Okay. So that's quite interesting, actually. You started off in the accountancy side, realised that you were sending a lot of business to mortgage brokers, so trained to be a mortgage broker and set up the mortgage broker company, then realised that the mortgage process is so antiquated, and you were like, right, this is where we need to step in and develop something. It's quite interesting that you led with the time saving before you did with the AI. But I assume, which we're going to get into, it sounds like AI has almost accelerated the purpose of that app. And we're going to talk about all that good stuff. But at what point, what was the point when you said, right, I'm looking at this mortgage process of what we do and it just takes too long? When did you think that? Because a lot of mortgage brokers are probably thinking the same, but maybe don't have the time to go and invest in a new app. What was it that drove that?
I mean, it's sometimes the frustrations because I've seen clients go till the end of the mortgage journey, right? Let's say somebody was buying a house. I've seen this happen, right?
Mhm.
They wait 5 months in the process. There's so much paperwork happening. And ultimately, the deal falls through, right? So it feels like everybody's wasted 5 months of their life trying to get
Mhm.
this mortgage through the line, right? And it just didn't make sense, right? Because that's when we thought, okay, let's just look at this, right, and say, how can we shorten that journey, right? Of course, there are certain things which are not within our control, but we are trying to do what we can to keep
Mhm.
those things under our control, right? So that's what we are trying to do. So we want to shorten that journey because that's the basis behind this whole thing, because we want to shorten the mortgage journey and again think of shortening it again and again and again, right? And this is obviously it's blue skies, but I'm hoping that at some point you can see mortgage applications sort of completing on the same day, right? Of course it's
Mm.
a dream, but I don't think we are very, very far from that, right? So yeah.
It's getting there, isn't it? And
Yes, it is.
even away from this conversation that we're having today, if you are a mortgage broker, we've interviewed, I think it's about 86 mortgage brokers now on this
Wow,
podcast.
okay.
The ones that I find have a streamlined business look at their processes and say, what can we do to simplify them? Regardless if you use a piece of
Yeah,
software that Ifthikar has, it's how do we make it easier for the client? And those are the most
yeah,
successful brokers I've definitely seen. Okay, before we talk about Mortgage Excellent and what that does, the big question that is on everybody's lips as a mortgage broker at the
yeah.
moment is, do you think AI will ever replace mortgage brokers, Iftikar?
I don't think so, because I get asked this question all the time. Right? The reason why I say that is the example I use is ChatGPT because almost
Mhm.
everybody uses ChatGPT, right? So when ChatGPT came, people thought, oh, this is going to replace a personal assistant and things like that. It didn't, right? It made the personal assistant much better than what it is, what they
Okay.
were, right? Because, if they write a letter, ChatGPT will check it for them, right? So you won't be making grammar mistakes and you won't be doing, uh, you know, writing tones in the letters in the wrong tone, right? So you won't be doing those things. So those
Mhm.
are the things that it helped, right? So likewise, in the mortgage space, it's the same. AI is only an assistant, right? Because end of the day, you're the advisor. That's what people like FCSE, right? Who's giving the advice, right? So advice comes from the advisor, but
Mhm.
AI is helping the advisor make that decision fast, and the AI is helping the advisor to sort of, uh, you know, make it not manual anymore, right? Digitize
Mhm.
that. And also, AI is going to help the user get a better experience, right? So that's kind of what AI is going to do, right? So because today everybody is used to AI, people are used to ChatGPT, people are used to so many AI related apps, right? So you come to the mortgage world and like it's all ancient, right? And what is this? Like, why am I sending papers? Why am I these are the frustrations brokers have, right? Where people ask, so why do you need all this, so much documentation, right? So AI will help you sort of cut down that, right? That's the whole idea behind it. So it will make life easy. We want advisors to advise. We don't want
Mhm.
advisors to be doing paperwork, right? That's the whole idea behind it. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say then. It's not AI at the moment isn't threatening that advice piece that a mortgage advisor is giving. What it
No.
is doing is everything that you mortgage brokers do, aside from having a conversation with a client, be that over a phone or over Zoom, it's trying to get rid of those things or make them easier for you. I
Correct.
think,
Yes.
and I had a conversation with a broker the other day, and it's a really interesting conversation around AI and mortgages. Is will AI ever get to the point where it understands common sense? And I think that's where the difference is, or
Yeah.
adaptability almost. That
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
because the way that AI works, the way that ChatGPT works, you can build something called a GPT. I'm speaking to the listeners,
Yeah.
not Iftikar here, because Iftikar will know
Yeah.
all about this. And it's essentially a robot, and you give that robot all of the information about a lender's criteria. We're going to call them Smith's criteria. So you give them all the Smith's lender's criteria. Then when you put a client into that GPT and their affordability and their fact find, it will try and find you a solution in the documentation. Now,
Yeah.
if there's something in there where they've not got a too good credit score, that GPT might not quite pick up on that. And that's where the common sense comes in, that they go, I wouldn't put them with Smiths, I'd put them with Jones lender. Do you see what I mean?
Correct.
This is where the mortgage advisors and I suppose as a business owner, Ifthikar, as a mortgage broker business owner, you want your advisors to be advising more, not to be doing the really boring admin tasks.
Correct. Yeah, I think that's what everybody wants, right? We've got an advisor who signed up. His objective is to play golf, right? And he wants to work, but he wants to work only 5 hours, right? And he wants to save that time to do that. So for some people, it's about getting that work-life balance, right? Because that's what technology does for you. And for some people, it's because admin is cost, right? So it costs a lot of money. So they can reduce that, right? And instead, because your time is money, isn't it, right? Because you can always advise another client instead of, doing the paperwork, right? So that's the saving that people will get. So that's why they are looking at solutions like this.
Right. Okay, so I suppose the other question is, if AI isn't going to replace a mortgage broker, the second question is, do you think it will replace an admin member of staff?
It will. Again, it's like the same personal assistant or PA sort of example, right? I'm not saying it will definitely replace them, but it will definitely streamline things. So let's take an example. So MortgageX has a facility where it analyzes bank statements. Now, as a human, I can look at bank statements and I can pick up a lot of stuff because I'm trained to do so, and I'm sure the admin is trained as well. But when AI analyzes the bank statement, it will highlight certain things which you might miss because it's programmed in that way to pick up those things, right? So it will make the admin's life much easier, right? Because obviously they're still checking stuff, but it'll make things easier for them. So that's why I think it'll add more value, right? Because if you look at it as a threat, like it or not, everybody else will be using it, right? So you can't look at it as a threat for yourself. You just need to see, how am I going to use this to make my job better, right? So I think that's the way everybody needs to look at it, right? Not cut down admin and say, I don't need admin, right? And, I'm just going to use this app, right? So I don't think it's going to do that, but it'll help you streamline a lot of things, right? Because you might not need unnecessary admin, because I've spoken to so many brokers. Sometimes they have admin, but they're really not doing anything, right? So, with things like that, you might be able to streamline stuff. Yeah.
So instead of having maybe 2 admins, if you can, if there's any admins listening to this, if I was an admin assistant, I would do everything I can to learn everything about AI, and I would be the admin specialist with AI on my side. So as a mortgage broker business owner, you, instead of having 2 admin, you could have a very highly skilled one admin that knows everything about AI, that can do 2 people's work, but on one wage. So that's interesting. Just wanted to ask that question about the admin. Okay, so when we talk about the manual tasks that AI can help with, what type of admin tasks can it do? For example, the first example that you get made was it can read bank statements. That's a big one because it saves the manual.
Yeah.
What other things can AI help with, either in MortgageX or outside of MortgageX?
So again, we are talking to banks these days because they are quite interested in the app and the AI journey itself, because even we can see banks shifting towards that side, right? I've done some of the research. Banks are heavily investing into AI, right? And obviously we've had conversations as well, so I know. So one of the things that AI can do is to analyze credit reports, right? So because again, credit reports I've read, which is about 60, 70 pages long, right? So a human going through 70 pages can miss out some point, right? But AI will analyze that for you and say, look, this guy's got a mispayment. You might want to look at this before submitting it to the lender, right? So it could do that. And there's another area which mortgage brokers hate, writing suitability letters, right? Nobody likes writing these letters, but they do it for, legal purposes. In case somebody sues them, they have a letter to show, right? Saying that this is what we discussed with the client. Now, the suitability letters that we have is sort of written using AI. Now, again, you talked about the GPT concept and we spoke about ChatGPT. So we use the same sort of concept, right? So we've got suitability letters, which has been programmed. And at the end of your mortgage application, the suitability letter just comes off the system. You just need to send it to a client, right? Of course, it's a bit like ChatGPT where you can amend things if you want, but even if you don't amend it, you've got all the details, right? Because if you want to put your personal touch, right, you can always do that, but it helps you. So if you're a person who doesn't want to do any of those things, it'll do the letter for you, right? It's the same concept of a ChatGPT, right? If you tell the ChatGPT, write me this letter, it'll write. Likewise, it'll do that. But here the difference is, it already has the content. So it'll use that to write the letter.
So why do you think networks aren't adopting this? Because a national network, could build something in to write the suitability letters. Why do you think they're not as forthcoming with it at the moment?
I wouldn't know. We've spoken to some networks who is quite keen on our application as well, because there are people who are interested. But it'll come, right? Because this is the problem we have with things like AI, right? Because people are scared to take that step because they're worried, right? Whether, am I doing something wrong, right? What does, X think of AI? And, we are compliance people, we need to worry about more. No, compliance, you have to worry about it. But at the same time, some of those compliance stuff actually can be, automated using AI, right? So that's where the difference is. But trust me, people will come around to it when they see all their competitors do it and they realize, okay, this is a threat to us, they will do it, right? Because, the first mover is always the brave one, right? People are scared to take that move, make that. But suddenly, if you have few networks using it and everybody else will like, okay, we are losing out on competition, right? So let's do it ourselves, right? It'll happen. It's only a matter of time, right? Because like I said, we're having conversations with networks as well, right? So yeah.
Oh, interesting. It is. It's like what the internet was in 2000. Yeah. You know what I mean? When people were in 2000, when they were all getting used to the internet, people were like, it'll never catch on. It did. And then social media was the next biggest thing. I'm never going to have, my photo on the internet, and everybody does.
Yeah.
And then AI now is, no, we think it's not human approach, et cetera, et cetera. Then 5 years later, people are like, yeah, we probably need to use it because everything moves forward, and that's what's so exciting about not only the mortgage industry at the moment, but the whole world when it comes to the likes of AI. When we talked about compliance briefly there, have you had any dealings with the FCA on this, or what are they? Do they have any reservations? Are they absolutely fine with it?
So again, FCA is about a lot of guidance, right? FCA doesn't say do this and do that. They don't stipulate. Most of the time, it's just guidance which you have to read and try and understand. So we've used consultants to help us with interpreting some of these things, but it's not very easy at times. So, and obviously they've had conversations with FCA as well. So what FCA mainly wants is they don't want, at this stage, they do not want robo-advice, right? You can't...
Yeah, which is understandable.
Yeah. There's no hands-off approach, right? It is pretty hands-on. But obviously, where you automate stuff, which is done sort of manually before, I mean, FCA doesn't have a problem with that, right? Because it's how we do it, right? So that's what AI does. Most of the time, what we do is we are automating stuff which is done manually. That's what we do as AI. That's where the biggest advantage we have. So long as we don't cross the line where we try and give advice, I think FCA is okay with it, right? I will give you an example of one of the tools we have. We have something called Amy, right? So Amy is your equivalent to Alexa or a Siri, right? You can ask Amy questions and Amy will answer. But the difference between advice and Amy is that Amy will stop at some point, right? It's not going to give you that advice. It is for more like, I'll say FAQs, but it can have a conversation as well, right? So if somebody asks what's a fixed rate mortgage, Amy will tell you, right? But then you can be clever and say, look, I want to borrow some extra money. So how can you help me, right? So it will give you some guidance, but at some point it will say, look, now you need to speak to a broker, because that's where FCA wants a line drawn, right? You cannot give advice. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear that, because I suppose as long as you're not giving that advice, then there's nothing wrong with that. You're utilizing AI as a knowledge bank, essentially. So people can ask it, what is a fixed rate mortgage? I suppose if they said, should I fix my mortgage now? That's very much, you need to speak to an advisor about that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Really
so at that
interesting.
point, in this example, Amy will direct it to an advisor, right? Because Amy shouldn't give that advice.
No, great. Okay, so before we get into the bits where we're going to get Ifthikar to give us some AI tools that we can use to help run our business, we'd like to make a £10 donation to say thank you for having you on the podcast. Which charity would you like for us to make the donation to?
I think we'll go with cancer research. It's because we all know somebody who's been affected by cancer. And, I think, that needs whatever funding is possible. I mean, I know it's a dream to eradicate cancer, but if we can have that, that'll be, fantastic thing to happen, right?
It'd be an incredible day, wouldn't it, if we found a cure?
Yes,
so we will make that donation for you. So now let's get into some practical tips that the mortgage brokers can put into practice.
Yes.
What tools would you recommend a mortgage broker starts having a look into, and which of those tools could help them run their business from day to day?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm an advocate of mortgage. Let's leave that aside, because obviously I'm biased when I say that, right? But I mean, again, I use a lot of tools myself, right? So I'll talk about the stuff I use. I use ChatGPT a lot, right? Because sometimes you need that inspiration, that idea as well, right? So you sometimes go and get that. Also, when you write letters, sometimes you think, oh, that looks a bit rough, right? So let's sort of make it look a little bit more professional. It can help you. So I think it's a must that everybody has ChatGPT. Also, I use, there are free tools on Google as well, which I use, again, to write letters, right? Because it drafts part of the letters for you. So I use that quite a lot. The feature, I can't remember exactly what it's called, right? But, what Google does, and they do this cleverly as well, over a period of time, they try to analyze your writing style, right? Because some people like writing emails, and some people like writing emails. So it tries to sort of analyze that over a period, and it gives you suggestions, right? Because it machine learns, right? That's what it does. So that's a tool I use quite a lot. I use Gemini as well. That's sort of ChatGPT, sort of equivalent. But I think in my view, ChatGPT is quite strong, right? But I use that as well at times. Also, I use things like captions for videos, and because I do a lot of videos, social media stuff. For editing, I use Big View sometimes as well. That's, if I'm doing something like I want to read something out, right? So I use Big View. So there are a lot of tools I use. I can go a little crazy with these things, right? If anybody wants to know, they can ask me. Because I like to experiment some of these things as well. Because, again, because I'm such a big enthusiast when it comes to AI, I love trying things, right? Sometimes it works for me and sometimes it doesn't. Doesn't mean that tool is bad, right? But it's just, it doesn't work for me, right? So, but I do like to try out, right? And where possible, I say, okay, can I connect this to the mortgage X, right? So that's the way I think of tools, right? So, yeah.
And this is the way that things are going for the listeners. Things like ChatGPT, they have something called an API. And what that allows you to do is to connect ChatGPT to loads of different pieces of software. I know a few brokers that have utilized ChatGPT and have plugged it into their CRM. So instead of having to go to ChatGPT and say, write me a letter about life insurance and the quote is going to be £15 per month, it's already built into their system. So they tick a button and it automatically writes the letter out. Very similar to Mortgage X, I think. Very time saving. but also to increase the quality of those communications to people.
Yeah.
With writing, so writing letters, engaging with clients, communicating with clients, do you think doing AI letters removes that personality, or can you train it to listen to sound like you? Sorry.
Yeah, you can to a certain extent, but we are all professionals, right? So, mortgage advisors, if you take it, they are professionals and they give advice, right? So when they give advice, you've got to be careful what you write there, because obviously ChatGPT machine learns, they've looked at various other examples and they give their view, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that their view is correct, right? Because that's when our intelligence come into play, not the artificial intelligence, right? Because quite often the letters I, get from ChatGPT, because I use it a lot, I amend it quite a lot. I'm saying, this doesn't sound right. This doesn't sound right, because, obviously I speak to chat as well, right? And, get ChatGPT to modify stuff, right? But end of the day, your intelligence is very important, because otherwise it will be a very generic letter, right? Because that's what you don't want to be sending your client, because end of the day, you're the advisor. You can't just copy and paste, right? So, yeah.
So that's it. It's there as a tool to help, guys. It's not a tool there to replace. And it goes full circle back to the beginning of this episode when I asked Ifthikar, will AI replace mortgage brokers? Most definitely not, because you still need to put your personal touch on these emails. So please don't think that AI can do everything for you and take it off your plate and go and play golf for the rest of your days. It's there to help you. So before we wrap up this amazing podcast episode on AI, can you give people an understanding of what Mortgage X does? And if they do want to have a chat to you about it, where's the best place that they can reach you, Ifthikar?
Yeah, so Mortgage X for me is obviously it's an app-based journey, right? Because traditionally, a lot of mortgage brokers, they send out a link to a client to fill a fact find, or they're on the phone trying to pick basic information about a client. So with Mortgage X, we want to keep that customer journey as short as possible. That's the whole idea. So we think spending 8 minutes on the app instead of filling a form which takes 2 hours and collecting documents in that 2 hours as well, we can bring it down to 8 minutes. Now, that 8 minutes of your client can save mortgage brokers about 8 hours of admin, right? Depending on how you work, right? If you're very strong in your IT, it might not be 8 hours, but most people, if you look at the average mortgage broker, we think they can save 8 hours. But here's where it gets clever as well, because we keep integrating with a lot of other providers, right? So we've integrated conveyancing now. Because we've integrated conveyancing, we call it intelligent conveyancing. That journey, we think now the people can move to a house 8 days early, right? If somebody is buying a house, because the conveyancing process starts as soon as the mortgage application goes in, or as soon as you get a dip, right? So you can start at that stage. But the difference is we share information with the conveyancers. So you don't have to prove your deposit to a conveyancer. You don't have to prove your ID to a conveyancer. All those, we use a common platform. So we are trying to, make this journey as smooth as possible for a client. Of course, these are mortgage brokers' clients, right? So that's the whole idea. But this is where it is but like I said, ideally, we want to make sure that people move as fast as possible, right? Today, it might be saving 8 days, but our target will be to save further days as we go, right? So that's the whole idea. Because like I said, ideally, my dream is to get the person to move to the house in a day, right? I mean, it may not happen in some instances, but I can see instances where it will happen. At this moment, we don't have that, right? But that's our ultimate goal, right? So we will strive to get as close as possible
Mortgage
to
offer
that.
in a day. Love it. And where
Mortgage
can
offer
people
in a
reach
day.
you if they do want to have a chat with you, Ifthikar?
Yeah, so we are available on sort of social media. Our website is called mortgagex.ai. So that's our website. So if you come to our website, you can easily book a demo, because the first button you see is book a discovery call, right? So you can reach us out that way as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. And if anybody wants to have a chat with you personally about AI and how it's working, what's the best platform for them to reach you on?
I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so if anybody has any questions, obviously my name is Ifthikar Mohammed, right? You can easily look up. There aren't too many Ifthikar Mohammeds on LinkedIn, so you can easily find me. So long
It's
as
a
you get
great
the
name
spellings
to
right.
say. It's such a lovely name to say. So it's spelt, if
Thank
anybody
you.
wants to search it on LinkedIn, Ifthikar, and you'll see Iftikhar on there. Very, very suave headshot on LinkedIn he's got. But Iftikhar, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know there's lots of people that want to know about AI, and we've spoken about it so much. But what I love today is we've spoken about how it's going to affect the mortgage industry in a very, very positive way. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Chris. Thank you. It's always a pleasure watching your show, and it's even a bigger pleasure having to be here. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Cheers, guys. I'll catch you on the next episode.
All right.